Hello students, today we are going to study about cell theory and the morphology of cells. Let us start with the introduction of cells. A cell is the smallest unit of all living organisms. Cells are the basic building blocks of all organisms, and organisms may be made of one cell like bacteria or multicellular made of many cells like a human. In multicellular organisms, several cells of one kind interconnect with each other and perform a shared function to form tissues, while several tissues combine to form an organ. And several organs make up an organ system, and several organ systems function together to form an organism. Let us now see the history of cell discovery. The invention of the microscope by Zacharias Janssen in the late 16th century led to the discovery of cells in 1665 by Robert Hooke. He examined very thin slices of cork using a compound microscope and observed a multitude of pores that looked like the wall compartments of a honeycomb. He introduced the term cell for each compartment, and Hooke's description of these cells was published in Micrographia. The cells in the cork observed by Hooke were actually dead cells, giving no indication of the nucleus and other organelles, and cells of living organisms could be observed only after the discovery of improved microscopes having high magnification. Live cells were first observed under a microscope in 1674 by Antony van Leeuwenhoek. He observed the algae Spirogyra and named the moving organisms as animalcules, meaning little animals. Let us now see the history of cell theory. Ludolf Christian Treviranus in 1811 and Johann Jacob Paul Moldenhauer in 1812 first proposed the idea that cells were separable into individual units, and in 1824 Henry Dutrochet declared that the cell is the fundamental element of organization. The cell theory was first formulated based on two publications in the 1800s. The first one was by Matthias Jacob Sleden in 1838, in which he proposed that all plant tissues are made from cells. The second one was in the following year, that is in 1839, by Theodor Swan in a publication in which he generalized the proposal to all living organisms, stating that all animal tissues are also made from cells. These generalizations by Sleden and Swan, after subsequent modifications, were later came to be known as the cell theory. The theory was further extended by subsequent discoveries by Carl Wilhelm von Nageli, who showed that cells form by division of one cell into two, and Carl Theodor Ernst von Sybol, who extended the cell theory to protists in the 1840s. The third component of classical cell theory was completed by Rudolf Virchow in 1858 with his generalization that all cells come from pre-existing cells. Thus, Virchow along with Sleden and Swan are often credited together for the formulation of the classical cell theory. Let us now see the classical cell theory. The main proposition of the classical cell theory holds that: number 1. All organisms are made of one or more cells. Secondly, cells are the fundamental functional and structural unit of life. And thirdly, all cells come from pre-existing cells, that is omnicellulae e cellula. Let us now see the modern cell theory. The classical cell theory has been extended to formulate the modern cell theory by incorporating further discoveries. The generally accepted parts of modern cell theory includes: the first is all living things are made up of cells. The second part is the cell is the smallest fundamental unit of structure and function in living things. Thirdly, all cells come from pre-existing cells by division. The fourth one is energy flow in the form of metabolism and biochemistry occurs within cells. Fifthly, all cells contain genetic material which is passed from cell to cell during cell division. The next is all cells are basically the same in chemical composition and metabolic processes associated with life occur within cells. The next is some organisms are unicellular or made of only one cell, while other organisms are multicellular or composed of many cells. Next, the activity of an organism depends on the total activity of independent cells. Let us now see the exceptions to the theory. Some exceptions to the cell theory are: first, viruses are not made of cells and yet they are considered to be alive by some. The second exception is the first cell did not originate from a pre-existing cell according to the accepted theory of evolution. Thirdly, mitochondria and chloroplasts have their own genetic material and reproduce independently from the rest of the cell. Let us now see cell morphology. A cell is a small membrane-bound compartment that contains all the chemicals and molecules required to sustain an organism's life. Cells contain organelles or tiny membrane-bound structures that carry out specific functions, and cells also contain DNA or deoxyribonucleic acid or RNA or ribonucleic acid as the genetic material for directing cellular activities. Thus, a cell generally consists of three parts. The first part is the plasma membrane or cell membrane, which serves as a selective barrier enclosing a cell. Plant cells have cell wall outside the plasma membrane. The second part is the cytoplasm, representing all the cellular contents between the plasma membrane and the nucleus, including the cytosol, which is a jelly-like fluid, all the organelles other than the nucleus, and the cytoskeleton. The third component is the nucleus, containing the genetic material in the form of a fine network of threads called chromatin, which condenses at the time of cell division to form chromosomes. Let us now see cell sizes and shapes. Cells differ remarkably in size, shape, and function. Cells come in many different sizes. Some cells, like eggs of birds, are visible to the naked eye. However, most cells are microscopic and cannot be seen by the naked eye and can be observed only with the help of microscopes. The size of the cell is generally measured in micrometers in diameter. For example, the size of bacterial cells ranged from 0.2 to 0.3 micrometer, while the size of liver cells is about 20 micrometer, and the size of plant cells range from 30 to 40 micrometer. The smallest cell is that of Mycoplasma genitalium with a size of 0.2 micrometer. Regarding size, the size of human body cells are highly variable, with erythrocytes of 7 microns, hepatocytes with 20 microns, sperms of 53 micrometer, eggs of 150 micrometer, while some neurons are as long as 1 meter. The pollen grains of plant cells may also reach 200 to 300 micrometer, while sizes of bird eggs may vary from 1 centimeter in quail to 7 centimeter in diameter in ostrich. Cells also differ variably in shapes, and the shapes of cells may be fusiform or spindle shape, stellate, prismatic, flattened, elliptical, globose or rounded, and so on. Some cells are also capable of changing their shapes. Example, amoeba and macrophage, while some others have typical shape. Example, spermatozoa and epithelial cells. The shapes of cells have evolved to help them carry out their specific function in the body. Some cells have a rigid cell wall while others lack them, allowing them to freely move the membrane and cytoplasmic contents as in pseudopods. Next, let us see the classification of cells. Cells can be grouped into two broad categories, that is prokaryotic and eukaryotic, based on their complexity. The first group of cells are the prokaryotes. Prokaryotic cells lack a well-defined nucleus and other membrane-bound organelles. The nuclear material commonly consists of a single chromosome lying in the cytoplasm called nucleus. Prokaryotic cells are found in bacteria, cyanobacteria or blue-green algae, and archaea. The second group of cells are the eukaryotes. Eukaryotic cells, on the other hand, have distinct nuclei bound by a nuclear membrane and other membrane-bound organelles like mitochondria, chloroplasts, lysosomes, rough and smooth endoplasmic reticulum, and vacuoles. They also possess organized chromosomes which store genetic material. Eukaryotic cells include all other cells such as protista, fungal, plant and animal cells. All living organisms including bacteria, blue-green algae, plants and animals are made of cells and may contain one or many cells. Some organisms contain only one cell in their body and are called unicellular organisms. Example, bacteria, blue-green algae, some algae, protozoa, etc. While other organisms have many cells in their body and are called multicellular organisms. Example, fungi, most plants and animals. Further, based on the kingdom into which they fall, cells may be grouped as plant and animal cells. Let us now take up some typical cells. Some cells have typical characteristics which differ from normal cells. Some examples are cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria are small, aquatic, photosynthetic and usually unicellular organisms, though they often grow in large colonies. Next are the viruses. Viruses are small infectious agents that can replicate only inside the living cells of organisms. They contain DNA or RNA as their genetic material, and viruses infect all types of organisms from animals and plants to bacteria and archaea. The next type of cells are the red blood cells. Red blood cells are the most common type of blood cell, serving as the principal means of carrying oxygen in the vertebrate body. They, however, lack organelles like nucleus and mitochondria, unlike typical eukaryotic cell. Let us now see the functional characteristics of cells. All cells are complex biochemical systems, and many features distinguish the cells from non-living chemical systems. The features that distinguish cells from non-living systems are: the first feature is nutrition. The cells take up substances from the environment, transform the substance from one form to another, releasing energy during the process and eliminating waste products through the metabolism, unlike non-living things. The second feature is growth and multiplication. The cells are capable of directing their own division. As a result of nutritional process, a cell grows and divides, forming two daughter cells through cell division. The third feature is differentiation. Many cells can undergo changes in form or function in a process called cellular differentiation. During cell differentiation, some substances and specialized structures related to reproduction, dispersal or survival are formed that were not previously present. The fourth is signaling. Cells respond to chemical and physical stimuli from the external environment, and cells can also interact or communicate with other cells, usually by means of signals or chemical messengers such as hormones, neurotransmitters, growth factors, etc. The fifth feature is evolution. Unlike the non-living organisms, unicellular and multicellular organisms evolve. During evolution, small heritable changes occur at low frequency in cells that may influence the adaptation of the cell and result in the selection of organisms best adapted to live in a particular environment. Let us now see the conclusion. In conclusion, we can say that cells are the unit of structure, physiology and organization in living organisms. The cell theory provides the proof for the fact that every living organism contains one or more cells. The tenets of the modern cell theory states that all non-living things are made of cells. The cell is the structural and functional unit of all living things. All cells come from pre-existing cells by division. Cells contain hereditary information. All cells have similar chemical composition, and all energy flow or metabolism and biochemistry of life occurs within cells. Although all living organisms are made of cells, cells differ variably in size, shape and function across the living kingdom. Thank you.